G'day everyone, my name's Dale. I am the developer of this game Imperialist. What I'm going to do is take you through the tutorial. So this is just a welcome message welcoming you to the game. Now, first thing it'll tell you is that there's a menu up at the top left where you can save and load games and other things, and there's a pedia up in the top right, which is where you'll find in-game help and references. This is what we call the world view, which is the map view, and you can move around with the mouse or keyboard. You can zoom in, out with the mouse as well. Now we have resources on the map. Now this is a very important one. This is wheat. So wheat turns into grain when you build a farm on it, and grain is one of the two major food types, with meat being the other. Meat comes from cattle and fish, which you'll see here. So in a game of Imperialist, what you want to do is get your builders to build farms on wheat and cattle, which will produce grain and meat, and those go to feed your workers. And food is distributed evenly between your citizens, and each citizen requires one piece of food. So it's 3 grain and 3 meat will feed 6 citizens. So this is your builder. The builder is the one that builds improvements on resources. So this is telling us to find a wheat resource and build a farm. So I right click and you'll see it's turned into a hammer, and we're building a farm. The next civilian on the map is the prospector. Now the prospector looks for hidden resources. Now they could be like mining resources like iron, gold, diamonds, tin, and he can find resources in hills, mountains, desert, swamps. At the moment it's asking us to find a hills tile to prospect. And off he goes. So we've now built a farm on grain, and we've prospected for hidden resources. As it says, civilians can only do 1 action per turn. So now we need to end the turn. Once we get to the new turn, you can see our civilians are active again. So we can now move this, and it's now asking us to find a cattle resource. Here's one. So it turns into a hammer again, ready to build. Right click and he builds. I get my prospector. He's already prospected that tile. So we go have a look at this hill. Now there's a number of tabs along the left hand side of the screen, and the first one is the warehouse. So this is logistics and warehouse. This is where you'll find stockpiles of all your items. Across the top are your building materials. Now these are the basic materials that a builder needs to build all their items, or their tile improvements. But if we go into the warehouse, as it explains here, what you can see is what was produced last turn, what you used last turn, and the difference for the last turn. So what you see here is we produced 1 grain, which came from that wheat farm. We had 2 grain eaten, which is from the workers, which gave us a balance of -1. So at the moment we've got a stockpile of 29. So this column here is when you allocate resources to factories, which we'll get to in a minute. But if we have a look at the lumber row, we've been using that to produce improvements. It's one of the most basic building materials. So what we'll do is we'll make our industry produce lumber. So open the industry tab. So this is the industry. It shows all the industrial capacity of your nation. On the left hand side is all the worker management, and you'll see that we've got 4 labourers. Now workers come in different skills: apprentices, journeymen, masters. Okay, now as you can see here, An apprentice produces 1 hammer, 4 hammers, 6 hammers, and a master produces 8, giving us a total worker output at the bottom of a number of hammers. Now I've got 4 labourers producing 1 hammer each, so my total worker output is 4 hammers. What you'll see further down here is the food breakup of what food is required by our workers. Now we've got 4 workers, so we need 2 grain and 2 meat. What we can do is we can recruit new labourers and promote them to high skills. And the tutorial is asking us to recruit a new labourer now. We now have 5, and our food has gone to 3 grain and 2 meat. So the total worker output is the sum of all workers' hammers, which is 5 labourers. If a worker is not fed, they become sick. And if they are sick, their hammers are removed from the total worker output. So it's important to get your food industry up and running quite quickly. So most of the industry tab is taken up by our factories. Now the factories are where resources and hammers are converted into commodities. Now these commodities are your production chains. And what you see is we've got a slider here that tells us how many we're producing and how many we could possibly produce with the resources we've got on hand. So you see we've got 20 timber, and since we need 2 timber and 2 hammers to make 1 lumber, we could have a maximum output of 10 lumber with our 20 timber. But at the moment we've got 5 hammers that we can allocate. So we allocate hammers to production chains by using the arrows on the slider. I'm going to allocate 2. Now we've only used 4 of 5 hammers, but and we can't do any more because each commodity requires 2 hammers. So we have now moved our builder and prospector, we've checked our logistics and warehouse, we've recruited labour and allocated hammers to produce lumber. We've done everything we can this turn. So close the industry tab and end the turn. So once again we find our builder and we get to improve any tile. Now I'm going to improve this forest here to produce timber. I'm going to get my prospector and investigate this swamp because we might find tin in a swamp. Now you notice here our prospector discovered iron. So what we'll be able to do is put a mine on that to produce iron, which can then be used to create cast iron. Now we can also check our warehouse and our industry. Now I'm going to leave this as is, actually I'm going to drop that down one and I'm going to produce cast iron. Because cast iron is another of our primary building materials that our builder needs. So Imperialist is a game where you build up over time. You increase your exploitation of the land to increase your industrial capacity, which leads to power and profit. So if I open the civilians and units, we can now build civilians. Now the tutorial's asking for another worker, or builder, sorry. So let's buy the builder. The builder costs $500 and 3 paper. So we buy the builder and we come out. We now have another builder. So I click my builder. Click my builder, and I'm going to tell my builder to improve this grain. Because remember, we need to get our food up and running, and then end the turn. Armies. To gain control of new land, you need to build armies to conquer other nations. Now, at the moment, there aren't other nations in the game yet, that will come in future development, but when there are other nations, diplomacy and war will be possible. So open the civilians and units tab again. Now what you see is the armies are what armies you have are listed on the right. You can have multiple armies. Now it says it's got one unit, and if I hover over it, you can see that the unit in the army is a regular. This icon indicates that it's located in the capital. Now these are the units that you can add to your armies. This one here is the regular, so we've already got one of those. Now each type of unit, there are infantry, cavalry and infantry. So each type of unit requires different resources. Now all of them need steel, but we don't have any steel. So what we're going to do is trade for them. So if we go to the trade window, so here we can buy and sell on the global market. Prices will fluctuate each turn based on external factors, plus also your buying and selling patterns as well. So when you buy, the price goes up. When you sell, the price comes down. So we need some steel to form units, so I'm going to buy a couple of steel. Now notice how the price went up. And we now have 3 steel in the warehouse. So we go back to the civilians and units tab, and we can now form units. So I'm actually going to build a hussar light cavalry unit. So we form the unit. Then we hover over the army. You can see it says 2, and we now have a regular and a hussar unit. So we now have an army of units that we can use to conquer new lands. So what we do is, here's the army unit here, so we select him, we can move him to another location. Now when you create new armies, or when you don't have an army in the capital, if you actually form new units, they will actually form a new army in the capital. Then you can take that army and you can move it on top of an existing army, and they will combine. And that's how you move reinforcements to your frontline armies. So now we can complete any other task we want to do this turn. And what I'll do is I'll actually show you that army thing. So if we go into civilians, I can now create... No, because I don't have enough fabric or labourers. Oh well. So I'm going to take my builder and I'm going to put him on cattle. So now we should have 2 grain and 2 meat coming in. Take this other builder, put it on a forest, so now we've got 2 timber coming in. Get my prospector, get the next swamp, and end the turn. So this now completes the tutorial. So this gives us a very basic overview of how to play a game of Imperialist. Now this is extremely basic, and there will be better tutorials coming in the future, especially after all the extra features have been added. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast, and I'll talk to you soon.